Ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special guest joining us today. When it comes to college football, this man knows it all. He's been covering the sport nationally for over 20 years and is currently the national college football insider for The Athletic, along with being a sideline reporter for Fox College Football. Ladies and gentlemen, we have Bruce Feldman joining us today. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Definitely, definitely. Well, let's get right into it here. By the time this show airs tomorrow on Saturday, we will be 1 week away from the college football season starting, and boy, is it good to be back. That long, grueling off season is finally behind us. And let's start with your alma mater, the University of Miami. They have a huge matchup in week one against Notre Dame. They just got ranked 10th in the AP poll. They obviously lost Cam Ward to the first overall pick in the draft, but they gained Carson Beck in the transfer portal. What are your expectations for Miami this year? Can they get into the college football playoff for the first time in the school's history?
I think they can. Now, look, last year, obviously, Cam Ward was a great addition for them. He went from being a projected fifth rounder to the first pick in the draft, and they were really explosive on offense, and he had a huge part in it. The issue for them was defensively, they were really bad. They gave up a bunch of points late in games. They had the game against Syracuse where if they could hold on to like a 3 touchdown lead, they go to the playoff. They couldn't. So Mario Cristobal fired his defensive coordinator, brought in Corey Heatherman, who'd been at Minnesota. Everybody is saying they love the direction of things now. We got to see it though, right? Because there's been a lot of hype about the Canes in the past. As you mentioned, Carson Beck comes in, about a year ago at this time. People in the NFL scouting world thought he was the top quarterback prospect in college football. They loved his smarts, quick release, accurate, look really good in 2023. And then last year, without Brock Bowers, without Ladd McConkey, those are two elite receivers. They struggled. He pressed. He was not as good. He ends up hitting the reset button, has an elbow injury, has surgery. Everything I've heard from the coaches I know down there in camp has been really, really positive. He's a different personality than Cam Ward, but he's still got a lot of leadership capabilities. He's played in a lot of big games. He has a really good offensive line and good backs. I don't think he has that Cam Ward had. Cam Ward had Xavier Restrepo, who was a security blanket and was almost always open. He had probably better, more experienced receivers. They did bring in C.J. Daniels, who was a transfer from LSU. I know they're going to lean on him. I think if their defense is as improved as the coaches say it is, I think they'll be a playoff team. Can they make a national title run? That's a big if, but I think they're in good shape with Carson Beck. I expect a big bounce back year from him.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head with Carson Beck. He's one of the quarterbacks that in this massive quarterback class with the Klubniks of the world and the Allers of the world and the Nussmeyers of the world, he's a quarterback that's not really being talked about much as a guy that can really increase his draft stock. And we've seen so much of this in college football recently when you look at the Jaden Daniels, the Bo Nix, and most recently Cam Ward coming back for that fifth year to play and get older in college football, develop more. And that's exactly what Carson Beck can do. Like you mentioned, he was viewed as maybe this first quarterback that was going to be taken in last year's draft, but struggled. Georgia led the nation in drops as well as the losses to McConkey and Bowers. And I think that Carson Beck's going to have a huge opportunity to really prove everybody wrong. Big quarterback, 6'4", 220 pounds, and he can get it done with his arm. He's a guy that completed over 70% of his passes in year three. What can he do in his senior year for Miami? I'm excited to see what they can do. Let's continue in the ACC here. Obviously, Clemson is the cream of the crop in the ACC. They were so good last year, and it seems like right now they have the best surrounding cast for Cade Klubnik that they've ever had. They got ranked fourth in the AP poll. In your opinion, the way I'm looking at Clemson right now is it's Clemson up here, then you have Miami, and then kind of everybody else. Is that how you view it? Do you view this huge gap in the ACC between Clemson and everybody else? And can anybody really catch the Tigers?
I do see it the same way. I liked how they finished. Obviously last year it got off to a terrible start. Georgia blows them out in the opener. But Klubnik, who was a huge recruit for them coming out of Texas, I think he's progressed really nicely. The other thing that I like is when Clemson was winning the national title a couple of times, not that long ago, but it feels like a while now. They had really elite receivers in addition to Deshaun Watson at quarterback and then Trevor Lawrence. The receiver level dropped down. I think it's back up now where they have three big time playmakers. What I really like about them, Tom Allen comes in. He was the Penn State defense coordinator, former Indiana head coach. I think he will fix a defense that has a lot of frontline talent that is. You look at Peter Woods, I think he can be a top five pick. He's a defensive tackle. He was on my freaks list. He's 310 pounds, can really run. They have a bunch of other guys. Sammy Brown was a true freshman linebacker, huge recruit who looked really good last year. I think the defense will be dramatically improved. Last year, there were times they really looked out of sync. I think that will be a big difference. I think this team can win a national title. I really do, because you have a veteran quarterback. You have a lot of firepower on offense, and I think the defense is going to be so much better. To me, when I look at it, Miami's dangerous, but you got to see it from Miami because we've heard a lot of stuff about how they're close, they're getting back. We just haven't seen it. Mario Cristobal's team needs to break through. It needs to show it's better on defense. I think Clemson's there. Now, obviously, they got to get better on defense from what they were last year. I think they will. And I would give them the benefit of the doubt. They have an interesting opener. LSU, you mentioned Garrett Nussmeier, super talented quarterback with a ton of speed at receiver. Defensively, the LSU Tigers have been really disappointing the last couple of years. They've spent a lot of money on the portal. That is a tough place to play. They're going to be on the road, and Brian Kelly's lost every opener he's had since he's been at LSU. That's a huge game right out of the gate in week one. LSU going on the road to play a really, really good Clemson team.
Yeah, Clemson just continued to get better after really getting spanked in week one against Georgia last year. This leads me into my next question. Who do you view this as a bigger must-win game for? And I know it's only week one, but when you look at LSU's strength of schedule, they've got a brutal schedule in the SEC. And for Clemson, it's a lot easier. But who do you view this as more of a must-win game in terms of this LSU Clemson matchup in week one?
I think it's from this standpoint, I'm going to say LSU, and here's why. When Brian Kelly went to SEC Media Days, he not only didn't shy away from the significance of the week one matchup on the road, but he was really playing it up. And what I wonder about is if they lose that game. And again, we've seen teams lose early. Last year, Ohio State lost early, lost in the middle of the season, and then they lost late against an underwhelming Michigan team, and they still ended up winning a national title. But I think what's different is if they lose this game, again, he's lost openers every time at LSU, but if they lose it, they have a mediocre opponent week two, and then they got to play Florida, who's pretty good and pretty talented. I just wonder how they bounce back from that. It's not impossible for them to do that, but there's a lot of pressure on Brian Kelly. If you lose that again, the opener, then you just start out saying, okay, how does my team bounce back from this? Because you've told people publicly so much how much you have put on this game. They have Clemson Tiger paws all over the LSU facility to kind of remind them how big of a deal this is to try to get them up. It's a tough game. It's a tough road environment. It's a really experienced team. If it doesn't go great, how do you pick up the pieces? I'm not saying they can't do it, but I think that's going to present its own challenges.
What does your hot seat meter look like in terms of Brian Kelly's job security? Let's say they lose this game and then they go into this SEC schedule with Florida at home, but then they go a few weeks later on the road against Ole Miss. They bounce back against South Carolina. They have Texas A&M at home, Alabama on the road, and then their season finale is on the road against Oklahoma. What's your hot seat meter look like with Brian Kelly if they go 7-5, 8-4?
Oh, if they go 7-5, 8-4, I think they're going to find the money to get rid of him because his buyout is huge. But again, it's LSU. The one thing the three coaches before him, Les Miles, Ed Ogeron, and Nick Saban, had the only thing they have in common is they all won national titles and they all won them within their first 4 years. Saban was the first of the coaches. He won it in year 4. The other guys won it in their first 3 years. The expectation that LSU are higher than any place in the country, and they spent a ton of money to get Brian Kelly there. They spent a ton of money in the portal here. If they don't get to a playoff, again, I don't know if it's national title or bust. I wouldn't go that far this season. If they go and play, make it to the semifinals, I don't think they fire him.
Mhm.
But if they go 7-5 or 8-4, I don't see how they bring him back. I really don't, because Brian Kelly's a really good coach and he did a really good job at Notre Dame. The biggest question mark is the fit in Baton Rouge, and they had a terrific first year under him, but then it started to like backslide a little bit. Last year, unranked, got blown out at home by not a great Alabama team. You lose to Florida late in the year. I think the expectation now is not only get into the playoff, it's go far in the playoff. And if you're looking at 8-4 in year four with a really experienced quarterback and a big portal budget, I don't know how you sell him coming back after that.
Yeah, I completely agree. Maybe the best quarterback in the nation with Garrett Nussmeier. All eyes are obviously on LSU. Yeah, yeah, go ahead.
One other point, Caden, on that, so the buyout is huge. This is the wild card piece of this. There is behind the scenes a case with a former player, Greg Brooks Jr., is a defensive back, was a veteran player, had medical issues, significant
Oh,
medical
yeah.
issues, and I wonder if that would be something where, suing the school, suing LSU and the medical people, if that would be something that if LSU is trying to get out from under this big buyout, is that something that they would end up utilizing to be like, okay, we're not going to pay him because there's some kind of stipulation that we can get out from behind. It wouldn't shock me if they tried to do that because the buyout is so big. Again, if we're talking about the record you were saying that's, what if I think all bets are off at that point.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And that's such a tragic story to what happened with him. Yeah, I just look at the SEC and there are so many tough teams. And I know we're looking at the Floridas, the A&Ms, like the teams that aren't even inside of the top 10. And I look at this Alabama team. That leads me into my next question here. Obviously 9-3 in year one of the Kalen DeBoer era. A lot of changes. His seat is, in my opinion, not that hot at all, but obviously there's huge expectations every single year when you're at the University of Alabama. They just announced this week that Ty Simpson will be the starter. They have a terrific offense. Ryan Williams and company, Caden Proctor, one of the best O-lines in football. Do you think this Alabama team has legitimate championship expectations? Where are you at with the Crimson Tide right now?
Yeah, I was able to go down and see them practice earlier this week and spent time, talk to, DeBoer and Ryan Williams and a bunch of other guys in the program. I think one thing that has helped them a lot, you mentioned last year was a disappointing season. It was like 1 week, like when they played Vanderbilt, they couldn't get off the field. They give up 40 points and they lose. Then they have earlier in the season, they look really good against Georgia, jump all over them, beat them. But then they look awful on offense against Tennessee, looked awful on offense against Oklahoma. And it just, was just kind of one of these teams that was like, it was a good team, but it was a disappointing team. This year, as you say, Ty Simpson takes over. I think from everything I've heard, there's been a big growth from him from the spring to now in camp. They're taking care of the football. They haven't really thrown many picks as a quarterback group in fall camp. What I think will help them a lot is Ryan Grubb, who was with DeBoer for a long time and was the offense coordinator when they had Michael Penix and those three terrific receivers and played Michigan for the national title. That was a really explosive offense and a high-powered passing game. He went to the Seahawks last year, was the offense coordinator there. Now he's back with DeBoer, and I think that will help them a lot. Everybody I've talked to inside the program feels like the offense is executing on a way higher level than they did at any point last year. They have a lot of firepower. Ryan Williams is the most explosive, probably receiver and skill guy in the country. I mean, he is a difference maker. You saw it when he was a 17-year-old freshman last year against Georgia. I mean, he's special. I think you mentioned Proctor, the 366-pound left tackle. This is going to be a really, really good offensive line. Parker Brailsford, the center. He was the starting center as a redshirt freshman when Washington played for the national title. And when they won the Joe Moore Award as the best offensive line in the country, a lot of experience there. The only real hesitation I have with this team is there's no like elite D lineman. When Saban really had it rolling in the best teams, whether it was Quinnen Williams or they had a Will Anderson, they had that guy who was almost unblockable. that you had to double team, that you had to worry about. LT Overton's probably the best option they got there. He's a really good player. I don't know if he's a great player, and but I will say this, they got a bunch of DBs who are also like from where we're from. There's a lot of Southern California defensive backs they're really excited about. And I think it's good in the secondary. They say they have better depth. We'll see if they can take another big step forward as a defense. I think they're a playoff team. I just don't know if they can win the national title.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really excited to see what Alabama can do, and I'm excited to see what Ty Simpson can do as well. I know everybody wants to look for the young, true freshman quarterback who's going to go light it up, but Ty Simpson, he's going to be a senior. He's been in college football for 3 seasons now, so he's got that experience factor, and we've seen that a lot recently. I mentioned it with Carson Beck. He's got this experience, although he's been developing and learning. What can he do for the Crimson Tide? I'm excited for this next question. I'm excited for your answer. I'm a massive Nebraska football guy. Year 3 of Matt Rule. That's when they cracked the code. He did it at Temple, did it at Baylor. Now he's got the opportunity to do it for Nebraska. Obviously, all eyes are obviously on Dylan Raiola, the true freshman 5-star quarterback who balled last year. The situation wasn't great for him, though. The play calling wasn't that good. I didn't feel that they had receivers that could win off the line of scrimmage. The O-line really didn't help. They didn't have an elite run game. It just wasn't anything special offensively. And when you have a true freshman quarterback, you've got to be able to help out the inexperienced guy. Now they did a great job bolstering up this offensive line in the portal, added some great receivers in the portal, headlined by Dane Key. And they have Dana Holgerson now as this play caller to really help out Dylan Raiola. I am so excited about Nebraska. I think they are a dark horse college football playoff contender. What do you think about that statement? Do you think that this is a team that can win 9 or 10 games this year?
Yeah, we're in alignment here. This has been the team I've kind of been touting whenever somebody talks about are they going, who could be like this year's Indiana. Now,
Love
obviously, Indiana was coming way off the radar, but I think they're the team. They're dangerous. You mentioned Raiola. Dana Holgerson's a big piece of this to me, right? He came in late last year, took over as the offense coordinator, but really took over Marcus Satterfield, the old offense coordinator's system. And what he was able to do this offseason was pare down a lot of the plays and I think streamline what they do. When I talked to him a couple of weeks back, he raved about Raiola's football smarts and the ability he can make with throws. I mean, he is a true 5-star talent at quarterback. Again, as you said, he played as a true freshman. The other thing that I think was significant, and Holgerson talked about this a lot, was they didn't have guys who could win outside. They had almost no speed. They took a couple of transfers who were okay players, but they were like 4'8", 40 receivers.
Yeah.
Dane Key's not Barian Brown, but he can beat a defense and he can make big plays. I think they've upgraded a lot at receiver. Ja'Cory Barney is probably the best playmaking guy they have, as a young skill guy from Miami who showed some flashes last year. I think they're excited about him. The schedule sets up pretty well for them to get some momentum. Now they lost 2 big-time defensive linemen who were look like a WWE tag team out there. Those guys are gone. I don't know if the defense is going to be anything special, but I think the offense is going to be that much better. I think they're a team that I could see them going 9-3, and I could see them maybe even springboarding themselves into the playoff. Raiola is super talented. I mean, I don't want to say he'd be a dark horse for a Heisman guy because I don't know if they can put up those kinds of numbers. They still don't have a ton of speed, but I think they're going to be so much better on offense with Holgerson. This is kind of his wheelhouse. He's really good at scheme and stuff. He's really good at finding out what works best for the players they have. And I think they have a chance to really break through. And as you said, Matt Rule, it's usually the first year is rough and then he starts to get rolling. I think he's a good fit there. I think they're a team that's going to really make a lot of noise in the Big Ten this year.
Yeah, I completely agree. And they lost, obviously, the defensive coordinator. They lost some pieces defensively to the draft. Shout out Nash Hutmaker and Ty Robinson, the WWE tag team duo. They were the best freakish defensive line I've ever seen. Like, In Matt Rule's first year, that defense was so good and they just kept getting let down by the offense. And then last year, I was so excited for that defense because everyone was coming back and it was the defense that was bad and it was Raiola trying to put all the pieces together. But they bring back Emmett Johnson as well, who hopped into the portal and then came back for this team. But I really think that Dana Holgerson is this key that can unlock this Nebraska offense. And Dylan's going to be so much more comfortable in college football. I'm excited to see how his mobility can really develop and excel as well, because that was one thing. He was kind of like a statue in the pocket, but for him to win the Heisman this year, I don't know if that's the case. I think if we can add some of these big time receivers that we have that we've recruited next year, I think he could be a Heisman guy. But man, that fires me up that you're all in on the Cornhuskers as well. I look at them as, a team like an Indiana that can definitely sneak into the college football playoff. Let's stay in the Big Ten here. I am so excited, and I'm quite frankly all in on this Penn State team. I think they are the number one team in the nation, and it's always been with this squad. Their defense is going to get it done, but what can this offense do? Now it's kind of flipped. Okay, they bring back Drew Aller. He has unfinished business. One of the most exciting quarterbacks in the country that can play himself into the number one overall pick, in my opinion. They bring back that 1-2 punch in running backs. What do you think this Penn State team can do this year? Are they a team that should be the best in the nation and they can win it all? Or do they disappoint again with James Franklin? Where are you at with Penn State right now?
I think pieces wise, they're the most ready team in the Big Ten to make a national title run. And when I say that, it's Aller who has everything you're looking for if you're an NFL team. We just need to see him make big time throws in the moment. Because honestly, last year when it mattered most, he wasn't able to do that. You mentioned Singleton, Katron Allen, terrific running backs. It's huge that they're both back. They have one of the best offensive line. Nick Dawkins, center, is a really good anchor and a leader in there. They upgraded the receiver, which was a huge concern. Trevor Pena, really good slot receiver from Syracuse. I think he's going to make a big difference for them. You get Jim Knowles on defense. He did a great job at Ohio State, and he knows what gave them problems, right? Also, because he coached against Penn State. Andy Kotelnicki, who came from Kansas last year, was a really good addition for the offense. When I look at how they match up compared to, let's say, Ohio State, and obviously that's right now the gold standard in the Big Ten, they have to break in a new quarterback. They got to replace two high-level running backs. I don't think Ohio State has anybody like Katron Allen or Nick Singleton are both, to me, significantly better than whoever is going to get the ball for Ohio State. The other thing is Ohio State is breaking in two new coordinators who are largely unproven in college. Matt Patricia's an NFL coach. He's never been in college. Now he gets there. Now he's got a lot to work with. Caleb Downs, elite safety, a ton of speed and size at linebacker, new guys up front in the defense, right? And then the other side, Brian Hartline, new offensive coordinator. He had the role and the little game planning a few years ago. It didn't go great. And now, he replaces Chip Kelly, where they were running the football really well. And they obviously have Jeremiah Smith and super talent at receiver. But I think Penn State is more primed to make that national title run. The biggest question for me, and it's unfair to put this on Aller, if you said to me, what do you think your national title pick is going to be? What I've been looking at all off season was I think it's Clemson against Texas. Well, neither one of those teams then would win the national title, and neither one of those quarterbacks, whether it's Arch, who's only started 2 games, and we know he's got talent, but he's not really done anything yet, or Klubnik, who looked pretty good, keeping them afloat against Texas, but it's not like they've won anything either. Drew Aller, you put the expectations on him. You also put the expectations on James Franklin, where it's been a long time since they beat Ohio State. He did it, but it was a long time ago. I feel like it's the burden of we need to see it because they've come close and just not gotten it done. But yeah, man, it wouldn't surprise me if Penn State won the national title. They have everything they need to do that. It's just there's a little bit of hesitation because they've been close and they found a way not to get it done.
Yeah. And it even feels like this year, if they lose to Ohio State, because they go on the road and play Ohio State later in the year, it still feels like this is a pretty favorable schedule and they can go 10-2 pretty easily, if not 11-1. I don't know what Oregon's going to be either in the Big Ten, but we're going to continue this trend with the three-peat of, okay, Michigan did it 2 years ago, Ohio State last year. Can Penn State complete the three-peat? We don't know what Oregon looks like. We don't necessarily know what Ohio State looks like, although they probably have the best player in college football in Jeremiah Smith, but they lost so much on offense and defense after they won the national title. They also have Indiana on the schedule. I'm not that confident in Indiana this year. I know they were a college football playoff team last year, had all of the hype and buzz in the world, but I'm curious to see what Indiana is going to look like. But yes, Penn State as of right now is my national title pick. All right, we've been talking a lot about quarterbacks on the show. Let's each draft quarterbacks here based on how we believe they're going to do this season. Once someone is selected, the other person cannot take them. We'll each take 5 quarterbacks. With the first pick in the college football quarterback draft, Mr. Bruce Feldman selects.
So is this going to be the guy I think is going to best chance to win the Heisman, or the guy who I think has the best chance to be the first pick in the NFL draft of quarterback?
We'll go Heisman just in terms of how they do this season.
Okay. At the Athletic, we did a Heisman draft. I didn't have till like the 5th pick, and
Okay.
I took Garrett Nussmeier. I am going to, if I have everybody, I'm going to take Cade Klubnik because I think feel like they have a better chance to go further in the playoff, although the playoff happens after the Heisman, but I'll go with Klubnik here.
Love the pick. Yeah, you've got to kind of correlate the winning along with the stats. I'll take Arch Manning. I think along with him being the favorite to win the award, Texas is going to have the wins. He's going to put up the stats, and I think he dazzles.
Okay, I will take Garrett Nussmeier then for
Okay.
LSU.
All right, I will take Drew Aller here. I think Penn State's going to be really good. I think they are going to run the ball a lot, but I think Drew Aller is going to have a big time season.
Okay, I'm going to take a guy whose team I don't think is going to make the playoff, but I think he's a really special talent, and that's Lenora Sellers from South Carolina.
Love the pick. Love the pick. All right, here's a little bit of a sleeper pick right here. Give me my boy Sam Levitt from Arizona State. I think ASU is going to win the Big 12 again this year. They've got the most returning starters in college football. Even though they lost Scadaboo, Levitt's going to be the guy who's called on. Him and Jordan Tyson, they're going to have a lot of production this year.
Yeah, I don't feel like that. I don't feel like that's that much of a sleeper because, like you said, I think they're probably have a real good chance of making the playoff, and he's got a legit All-American receiver next to him. So I think that's good. Now you got me sitting there thinking about, is this where I jump on a Big 12 quarterback? I'm not ready to. I'm going to take Carson Beck. We talked about him before. He's got an offensive coordinator in Shannon Dawson who played a big role in Cam Ward breaking through and becoming the first pick in the draft. He doesn't have a super loaded group of receivers or some young guys, but he has a really good offensive line and good running backs. I feel good about Carson Beck there.
Okay, I like that pick. All right, with my 4th pick, I'm going to take DJ Lagway. I loved the flashes that he showed last year with Florida. Now that he knows he's going to be the day one guy, I think he's going to have a huge year. I've seen a lot of people take him as the Heisman winner. I don't know if he's going to win it, but I know he's going to have a massive season.
I'm going to go take a little wild card here. He hasn't played that much, but as you said, he's been around for a long time. I got a chance to see him this week. He can move really well. He's got Ryan Williams. He's got Jeremy Bernard, and he's got a great offensive line, and that's Ty Simpson. Just basing also on the fact that we talked about Ryan Grubb likes to throw it all over the place. I could see Ty Simpson surprising a lot of people putting up big numbers.
All right, I'm also going to take a wild card here because you took one. My last pick here, I'm going to go with Dante Moore. The praise for him last year was wild from the Oregon receivers, and I've got to buy that. I've got to buy the hype. They've produced 2 Heisman contending quarterbacks over the last 2 years in Bo Nix and Dylan Gabriel. Give me Dante Moore to wrap up my list. All right, let's hop into a rapid fire Q&A real quick here. Give me your Big Ten winner.
Um, I'm going to say Penn State.
Okay, I'm also going to take Penn State here as well. Give me your Big 12 winner.
I'm going to take Iowa State.
Interesting. Okay, I'm going to take my ASU Sun Devils. They get it done. Give me your SEC winner.
I'm taking Texas.
I'm going to also take Texas as well. All right, ACC winner.
Clemson.
Clemson as well. Who you got winning the Heisman?
Um, This is a good question because I haven't really like
I know I'm putting you on the spot.
said, yeah. Whew, I'm gonna stick with Klubnik.
Okay. I've gone back and forth on this so much. It's hard to not take Arch here. I think Garrett Nussmeier is the best quarterback in the nation, but I just don't know if the winning is there. Uh, I'm going to take Jeremiah Smith. I think Jeremiah Smith is going to have a huge year. I think Julian Sayin wins that job, and I think Jeremiah Smith absolutely eats. What's your national championship matchup, and who ultimately wins it?
It's the same one we saw before ASU got to play Texas. It's Clemson against Texas. And I've talked myself into Clemson.
I love the pick. I love the pick. I'm going to also go with Clemson in the national championship against the Nittany Lions, and I've got Penn State getting it done. Drew Aller puts that crown on his head, and they get it done. That was awesome. That was awesome, Bruce. Thank you so much for joining us today. Ladies and gentlemen, to keep up with Bruce, you can follow him on X at Bruce Feldman CFB. And you can also see him covering the games for The Athletic and Fox College Football this year. Bruce, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Caden.